A gratitude practice can help you protect your brain from Alzheimer's. How? Well, it helps your focus and attention, as if you added more capacity to your brain's working memory, which is key to memory and learning and building cognitive reserve. But an effective gratitude practice, well, it doesn't just consist of listing things you're grateful for. You need one more thing. Welcome to Happy and Healthy with Amy, the brain health podcast for women in midlife who want to not just survive, but actually thrive during the menopause transition and beyond. I'm Amy Lang, master health coach, best-selling author, and daughter of Alzheimer's, and I'm here to help you make this next chapter of your life the best one yet. Well, hi there, Amy here. Thank you so much for joining me today, and welcome back to another episode of Happy and Healthy with Amy. If you're listening to this episode on the day it actually drops, tomorrow is Thanksgiving here in the U.S. And in past years, I focused on how to deal with the potential stressors related to the holiday, like the food police and food pushers, as well as emotional vampires. But I've been remiss in that I haven't actually done one on gratitude. That is until now. So this episode is dedicated to gratitude, the science, the benefits, and the practice, which, by the way, is also a great way to reduce stress. But an effective gratitude practice requires more than just listing 3 things you're grateful for in the morning or before you go to bed at night. It has to have a specific element. But before I get into what that is, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page with some definitions. First one, what is gratitude? So the American Psychological Association defines gratitude as a sense of happiness and thankfulness in response to a fortunate happenstance or tangible gift. So when we talk about gratitude, I want you to understand that it's both a state and a trait. So a trait, like a personality trait, right, is a consistent long-term quality or characteristic. Like you might describe someone as anxious, which means that it's also stable over time and across different situations. On the other hand, someone who is anxious or nervous right before giving a big presentation, right, that would be referred to as a state. So this is a temporary emotional or behavioral condition, and it fluctuates depending on the specific situation or trigger. Make sense? And then emotions and feelings are a little different too. So emotions are the brain's automatic physiological reactions, whereas feelings are your conscious interpretation of those reactions. So emotions happen fast. We're talking like milliseconds. And they're physiological states designed for survival. So we're talking about fear, anger, joy, sadness, disgust, and surprise. So you don't get to choose them. Your brain generates them to signal threat or opportunity, to get you to move, right? So they live in your body. Your heart rate changes, your hormones may shift, your muscles can tense or relax. So you can think of emotions as the raw data that's coming into your brain. Feelings, on the other hand, happen after emotions. We're talking seconds to minutes. And they're shaped by personal history, beliefs, thoughts, and meanings that you attach to the emotional state. So They are the story your mind generates to explain the emotion. So you can think of feelings as the narrative layer your mind adds. And according to Dr. Robert Emmons, the feeling of gratitude involves 2 stages. First comes the acknowledgement of goodness in your life, in one's life. Okay. Second, recognizing that sources of this gratitude lie outside the self, right, with other people. Now, before we get into the science of gratitude, I want to make sure you're aware of all the health benefits of it, so you understand why gratitude matters so much in the first place, and then why a gratitude practice is something you really want to consider starting. That is, if you don't have one already. So the benefits fall into 3 categories: physical and brain-based benefits, cognitive benefits, and emotional and social benefits. So first, the physical stuff. So research shows that gratitude reduces inflammation. Specifically, markers like IL-6 and TNF-alpha, which are linked to chronic disease when they're elevated long term. Okay? Gratitude also lowers amygdala reactivity. This is your brain's threat detection system. So you can think of it like if you had a motion sensor, making it so that it's less sensitive. Or if you have a big dog versus a little dog. Usually with big dogs, there's more required in order to get a reaction out of the dog, right? So we're lowering your sensitivity. So this means your nervous system is calmer and your cortisol levels aren't constantly elevated, which is so much better for your body as well as your brain. So of course, you also sleep better and you're more resilient to stress. Now, on the cognitive side, gratitude gives you clearer thinking, better decision making, and less overwhelm. So gratitude frees up mental space. It helps your brain focus on what matters in the present instead of dwelling on the past, which is something you can't change, or on what's missing, or comparing yourself to others, or what could go wrong, which is basically about the future that literally hasn't happened. But your brain can't tell the difference between real and imagined threats. So a gratitude practice helps with your focus and attention, as if you added more capacity to your brain's working memory, which is key to both memory and learning, as well as building cognitive reserve, which you probably know protects your brain from dementia. And then emotionally and socially, gratitude can actually help you become more empathetic. It can strengthen your relationships and it can help you feel more grounded, more open, more willing to be vulnerable, which is essential for deep connection. And mind you, these aren't separate benefits. They're all connected. So when your brain is less threat reactive and more connection oriented, everything else improves. Now you're thinking, how does gratitude lead to all these benefits? Well, first, it's really important you understand your brain isn't wired to default to happiness. It's wired to keep you safe. And that means it's biased toward the negative. So when you think about your brain's top priorities, survival is number 1, with safety and security being a close second. Next is conserving energy, and then finally seeking reward. So the top two priorities are really defensive in nature. Right? In other words, our brain is wired for threat detection. These are the avoidance or defensive circuits, which is part of your sympathetic nervous system that you probably know as fight or flight, right? This drives fear, rumination, hypervigilance, and anxiety. And these circuits dominate by default, which means they're fast and they're deeply wired because they kept our ancestors alive. And they're also sticky, like Velcro. So what do I mean? So think about the last time you got negative feedback, right? The negative stuff sticks and stays. And the positive stuff, it's almost like Teflon, right? It practically slides off like water off a duck's back. Which makes sense when you think about what our ancestors were going through. So thousands of years ago, if they were walking through the forest, they would need to be scanning for threats constantly, right? That rustling in the bushes could be a predator. Better assume the worst. Because when you think about it, the brain that assumed danger and was wrong got to survive. But the brain that assumed safety and was wrong didn't. So your brain naturally tips toward defensiveness, toward vigilance, toward negativity. That's how natural selection works, right? And as you probably know, when your brain detects threat, it's your sympathetic nervous system that gets activated, which is responsible for releasing hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, right? Now, the beautiful thing about human biology is we have all kinds of push-pull mechanisms. You can think of it as balance, like the one that you see at the doctor's office, right? So the defensive circuits are sitting on one end, and on the other side is the sliding weights. These are your social behavior circuits. And these are the circuits that drive gratitude, empathy, connection, safety, trust, caregiving, and social closeness. And these circuits are also powerful, but they must be activated deliberately. So gratitude doesn't just happen to you the way fear does. It requires intention and practice and cultivation. So those sliding weights on the physician scale, right, they don't just move by themselves. But when you do move them, you're tipping the seesaw or creating balance on the scale. And when you do that, you're now activating your parasympathetic nervous system, which is known as the rest and digest part of your autonomic nervous system, right? Which is when you get to relax and recover. So when you do that consistently over time, gratitude will tip the seesaw toward connection. It literally shifts your baseline, which means you reduce your fear and anxiety responses. You also enhance calm, safety, and meaning, right? And you shift your baseline mood over time. So this is neuroplasticity in action. Your brain changes based on this practice. And the research is also clear. Happy people are grateful for what they already have, not the other way around. In other words, you don't practice gratitude because life feels good. You practice gratitude so your brain becomes more capable of feeling good as life unfolds. So, just like your muscles, with repetition, you're strengthening that neural pathway and becoming more adept at seeing the world and your experiences through the lens of gratitude, right? So that's the power of this practice. Now, to be clear, it's not about pretending everything is perfect. We're talking about rewiring your brain to notice connection and safety and meaning even when life is hard. Now, if you're ready for some more science, when you experience authentic gratitude, right, not the forced, I should be grateful kind, but the real, deeply felt kind, your brain releases serotonin. And serotonin does something really important. It shifts your brain toward approach, openness, and connection. It makes you feel safe enough to engage with the world and the people around you, right? This is why gratitude feels so different from other positive emotions. It's not just, I'm happy because something good happened to me. It's, I feel connected. I feel cared for. I feel part of something bigger than myself. And that's the serotonin talking with a little bit of oxytocin, right? And here's where it gets really even more interesting. Gratitude doesn't just activate reward and safety circuits and caregiving circuits, it also activates what researchers call the meaning-making network. In other words, your brain is wired for stories, and this involves two key areas of your brain. The medial prefrontal cortex, medial meaning middle, right? And the anterior cingulate cortex. So these are the parts of your brain that help you interpret meaning, feel empathy, and integrate emotional experiences into your sense of self. And these two areas light up during deep gratitude, especially when you receive gratitude from someone else, or when you recall a meaningful moment, and even when you witness someone else receiving support. So with this in mind, this is why most gratitude practices aren't very potent. So again, I'm talking about the ones where you list things like, I'm grateful for my house, I'm grateful for my car, I'm grateful for my coffee, right? It's fine. It's not harmful, but it doesn't activate the deep neural circuits that I've been talking about that include experience, include a narrative. And it turns out the most powerful gratitude practices involve not the giving of gratitude, but the receiving of gratitude, or experiencing it vicariously through others. So by this, I mean, we're talking about the emotions that come with seeing someone else being helped. I think of it as witnessing something that restores my faith in humanity. Right? So again, it's not about making lists. It's about narratives. It's about stories that have emotional weight, relational depth, and a sense of being cared for or cared about. So there needs to be context, right? It's got to activate that medial prefrontal cortex. And there needs to be a why behind the gratitude. And here's the great news. The more you do it, the easier it becomes, right? There are new neural pathways being formed, and you strengthen them with repetition. Again, we're talking about neuroplasticity. Now, the key here is it's got to be genuine, right? We're talking authentic gratitude, something you really felt, not forced or faked, and not because you should be grateful, okay? And this also applies to when someone is expressing gratitude to you, right? If you sense insincerity, it won't have that same effect. But when it's genuine, you get that warm, fuzzy feeling, right? And a deepened bond with the person who gave you that gift of gratitude. So let me give you 4 journaling prompts that are specifically designed to activate those gratitude circuits. Ready? So prompt number 1, a moment someone helped you. So I want you to recall a time when someone supported you in a meaningful way. Maybe they showed up when you needed them. Maybe they said exactly the right thing at the right time. Okay? Write about that moment. Who was it? What did they say? How did you feel? So, I've talked about this person before, Al Malamo. He's a volunteer at the Red Cross that I met. And he had been volunteering with Red Cross for a long time when I first joined. And he told me, as a volunteer organization, the Red Cross, if you say yes, the Red Cross will keep asking you for more. And no is a complete sentence. You don't have to apologize. You don't have to explain anything. You can just say no. And I've been forever grateful for that piece of advice. Right? It's been such a relief in a lot of ways, as well as empowering. Okay? So, prompt number 2, a time you felt seen. So here I want you to write about someone who believed in you or advocated for you. Maybe they saw your potential before you did. Maybe they vouched for you when you weren't in the room. What did that mean to you? And then prompt number 3, a moment you made a difference. So I want you to remember a time when someone expressed gratitude toward you. What did they say? How did you feel? And what impact did you have on them? So for me, this is actually why the work that I'm doing right now about Alzheimer's prevention and working with the Daughters of Alzheimer's is so gratifying. Like every time I talk to someone and they felt overwhelmed, not knowing what to do, or even what questions to ask, right? To help, say, a parent who was just diagnosed, or what they themselves could do. When I'm able to share with them what a diagnosis means, how to interpret test results, or that there are actually things you can do as far as lifestyle changes that can reduce your risk. The thank yous that I get, they're so heartfelt. And it makes the work that I do so meaningful that I just want to keep going. I want to learn more. I want to share more. So think about when the last time was that someone thanked you for something. All right, so that's what I mean when I say when you receive gratitude. Can you receive it with that open heart too? Right? And then prompt number 4, borrowed gratitude. And this one's a lot more powerful than people think. So write about witnessing someone else receiving something meaningful. Maybe you saw someone get help that they desperately needed. Maybe you watched a stranger do something kind for another stranger. Write about what you saw and how it made you feel. Because you're training your brain to look for gratitude, for acts of kindness, and pay attention, right? Instead of always just paying attention to threats. And also, because of the effects of receiving gratitude, I would suggest writing a thank you note every day to your gratitude practice. So this could be by text or in person or by phone, right? Seriously, it doesn't have to be long or big or complicated. We just want it to be genuine. Because now you know your gift of gratitude is a very potent form of helping someone else's brain health too. All right? So as we head into Thanksgiving tomorrow here in the U.S., I want to invite you to apply what you've learned. Try a small act of giving from the heart. And if you're receiving, let it really sink in. Okay? It's a great way to start your new gratitude practice. If you don't have one already in place, or to tweak your existing one to make it more effective. Alrighty? So if you found this episode helpful, please hit that like button, the subscribe button, the little notification button, right? And share it with a friend who you think would benefit from a gratitude practice too. All right? So once again, thank you for being here. I am really so grateful for you. And to all my listeners and those of you watching who celebrate Thanksgiving here in the U.S., happy Thanksgiving. Alrighty, so I'm going to end today's podcast with a quote by Melody Beattie. Gratitude makes sense of our past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow.